Today, we're going to talk about the number one best meal for type 2 diabetes, heart and kidney disease, in addition to a lot of other metabolic diseases. But the most important thing to understand about this topic is this one word right here, metabolic, because a lot of people have that wrong, okay? When someone talks about metabolic disease, sometimes people will think, oh, metabolism disease. Oh, the person's not able to lose weight easily. That's only a very tiny part of this problem. Metabolic disease is not just about not being able to lose weight. When they use the term metabolic, they're talking about a huge problem at the cell level, where the cells can no longer get energy. So it's energy failure at the cell level in an abundance of fuel. So it would be like this. Let's say, for example, you're in your house and you're hungry and you have all these food trucks outside your house, but someone has a padlock on the door. You can't get access to it. That's exactly what metabolic disease is. And that's what's happening in your brain cells with Alzheimer's. You have all this sugar available and all this fuel, but you can't get access to it. So then the nerve cells or the brain cells start dying out of starvation. Let's take diabetes, for example. You have all this high blood sugar, but look at a diabetic. They're going blind, kidney disease, heart disease, type 3 diabetes, which is Alzheimer's, which is a type of dementia. And then, of course, your feet. You're losing the nerve function in your feet. So you start getting gangrene and they have to cut off the toes and it starts affecting the fingertips. That's all related to your cells literally starving of fuel despite a massive amount of fuel that's available to them. And what's really wild is type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and chronic kidney disease represents 25% of our population. So that means 1 out of every 4 people are diagnosed with one of these. That's crazy. But then if we get into another research paper, which I'll put a link down below from Harvard, 93% of US adults had at least one abnormal risk factor: high blood glucose, high blood pressure, high blood lipids, overweight, visceral fat around the gut, inflammation based on a blood test, a fatty liver, or sleep apnea. That means only 7% of the population has an optimum numbers and they don't have any of these. That's crazy stats. So at the root of the problem is the mitochondria. That's the energy factory of the cell. It is losing function. And that's really at the heart or the root at metabolic disease. But it's pretty wild to me that the recommendations for certain foods for these conditions are just ignored. They're not acknowledged as something super significant. Instead, each one of these is treated with a different drug to manage the symptoms. Same thing with all these. So today we're going to actually talk about exactly what meal would be the best meal to reverse this. There's obviously states of advanced liver disease, advanced dementia that you can't do anything about, but you never know until you try. So like I said before, metabolic disease is where the cell cannot get energy from sugar or fat. It doesn't go in there because the hormone that's in control of this, that allows it to go into the cell, is not working that well anymore. There's resistance to that, and they call that insulin resistance. And so if there's resistance to insulin, the fuel is going to be very low, and you're going to have a lot of symptoms like I just talked about. But now let's get into how that's created. How do you develop the situation in the first place? The foundation that you need to understand, first of all, is what is normal blood sugar? Well, between 70 and 90, let's just say an average of 80, okay? Milligrams per deciliter. That's what normal is. But what does that mean? Well, this is the number that represents how much sugar you have in your blood, and this will shock you because normal blood sugar equal roughly 1 little tiny teaspoon of sugar. So in other words, your circulation in your entire body can only tolerate 1 tiny freaking teaspoon of sugar. And then the next thing is, how much sugar do people actually consume per day? On average, 31 teaspoons every single day. Okay, that's a lot, right? And people know that too much sugar is bad. But that's not even half the story. There's something else: carbohydrates, starch. In most of the foods that most people eat, we're not talking about potato starch. We're talking about refined starches. That's what industrial starch is: modified food starch, modified corn starch, maltodextrin. That's not actually a sugar, but it behaves worse than a sugar because it actually creates a massive spike in blood sugar, more than actually you eating sugar. And what's really wild, it's not even sweet. It's like bland. When you taste it, there's nothing. So why do they put it in there if it's not sweet? Well, they use it as a filler. Sometimes they use it for texture. If we take a look at the average amount of starches that's consumed by an average American, it comes out to 56 teaspoons a day. Wow. Let's add these up. We get 87 teaspoons of sugar. This really is sugar because it's hidden sugar. Starch is a string of glucose molecules together, but it's so highly refined, it'll break down into glucose really fast as soon as you eat it, and it spikes the sugar. I mean, think about adding all this refined fuel into this machine, completely different than how nature has designed things to come with, like fiber and phytonutrients, which are protective, and all the antioxidants. But no, we're just getting straight jet fuel, or even like straight diesel. It's going right in this machine, and it's just creating a massive destruction. Now, this 87 teaspoons is based on an average of 2,000 calories per day. But I would venture to say that the average American consumes way more than 2,000 calories per day. If you take a look just at how much weight they have, I would imagine it's probably 25 to 28 to maybe 3,000 or more calories per day. That's just my wild guess. So let's just say it was 3,000 calories a day. Then that brings this number up to 131 teaspoons of sugar every single day. What's really happening is, because this excess sugar is so dangerous to the inside of your arteries, your body is going to try to protect yourself, and it's going to create this sucking out of all the sugar out of the arteries with a vacuum. That vacuum is insulin. So insulin is sucking the sugar out as soon as you eat it, and it's going to put it in storage, okay, as belly fat, as liver fat, as high triglycerides. But in that process, you really start destroying the mitochondria. So that's kind of a compensation, protective survival mechanism. And you can get away with that for a period of time. In fact, in the beginning of that, you can check someone's blood sugar after they ate a ton of sugar and it comes out normal. Because in the background, your pancreas is working like crazy to jack up insulin and suck the sugar out. But that's never tested. We don't ever test fasting insulin. We're looking at the blood sugars, and they seem to be normal a lot, at least for the first 15 to 20 years, until the pancreas starts becoming completely exhausted, where it can't produce the insulin anymore to a certain degree. Now you start seeing prediabetes, where now we start getting a higher blood sugar, maybe 120, 124, and then going into 125 diabetes. After 15 to 20 years of doing this, then they diagnose you with type 2 diabetes. If they would have done a fasting insulin test, they would have picked this up long ago. What would be the best meal to reverse chronic disease? I'm talking about type 2 diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease, and a lot of other issues. Well, obviously, you need to cut down the refined carbohydrates. That's the most important thing. And also, what would be helpful is to not eat so frequently, like maybe have 2 meals or even 1 meal a day. But also, the frequency of eating and all these little snacks will get you into trouble. The really cool thing is, when you do what I'm going to show you, you are going to fix the mitochondria, and you're going to be able to use the mitochondria and allow your body to finally tap into the fat reserves. And the way that you're going to know it's working, this is super important, more than weight loss, Can you go from one meal to the next without being so darn hungry? Can you go for a longer period of time without starving? If you cannot, then we have more work to do. If you can, then you know your body is actually eating your own fat when you're not eating. That is what you need to look out for. And to create this metabolic shift back into the mitochondria, what you have to do is lower the carb and not eat so frequently. But now the question is, what do you eat? Well, I'm going to show you the perfect meal right here. Let's start with the salad. Okay, so one of the best leafy greens, and I'm just giving you an example of one of the best. There's a lot of other foods and varieties, but I'm just picking out certain things for a reason, which I'll explain. Arugula is a type of green. It's a little bit bitter. Not only is it a type of cruciferous, which will help your liver, and not only is a leafy green that will give you magnesium and chlorophyll and vitamin C and folic acid, but it's very high in nitrates. So it's going to give you one of the highest amounts of nitric oxide. Now, wait a second. What is nitric oxide? Nitric oxide is usually deficient when you have high blood pressure, when you have heart disease, and nitric oxide creates more vasodilation. It creates more opening and relaxation of the arteries. And so it's really important in blood flow. And what you need to know is when you have insulin problems, this shuts down. So now we have high blood pressure. How do we correct this? What we have to do is we have to fix the insulin problem, but we also want to eat foods that can really spike this nitric oxide. It's going to help your blood pressure. It's going to help the heart. It's definitely going to help the inside of the arteries because it's a salad and it has a lot of things in there. So it's also going to help the mitochondrial efficiency because we're trying to eat for your energy factory. It's also loaded with magnesium. Magnesium is not just about your muscles relaxing. It's not just about sleeping or reducing stress. It's about creating energy. Part of the biochemical pathway of turning fuel into energy in your energy factory. So we need certain things, especially the magnesium and also potassium. Okay, and that's going to come from arugula. Now, on this little salad base, you can use balsamic vinaigrette or, better yet, apple cider vinegar. Okay, apple cider vinegar has been shown in studies to improve your blood sugar because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to also make insulin more sensitive. Then on the salad, you want to put extra virgin olive oil, the real thing, which is loaded with polyphenols, which is plant-based chemicals that are going to go into the arteries and help support them and also help reduce blood pressure, okay, if you have that problem. You can also add some pumpkin seeds, which are a really good source of magnesium and other things. I would get the roasted ones, easier to digest. Not a lot, just a little bit on this salad. The other thing that I add on my salad is nutritional yeast. Okay, I get it unfortified because you don't want to have them add the synthetic vitamins. But nutritional yeast is one of the best sources of B vitamins. This energy factory needs B1 to work, B2 and B3 to help extract energy from the food and actually make energy. If you don't have nutritional yeast, you can also get your B1 and other B vitamins from sunflower seeds. So roasted, you can use that. So either or both. And then let's stick an avocado on there for the potassium. You get a lot of potassium. We need like 4,700 milligrams of potassium. That's a lot. Very few people get enough potassium. Potassium is a physiological tranquilizer. It's going to calm you down. It's going to bring the pulse rate down. It helps the blood pressure. It helps protect the kidney. It helps in the sodium-potassium pump to allow your nerve cells to fire and your muscles to work. So we can't forget about potassium. In addition to the balance of sodium-potassium, you can tolerate more sodium with more potassium. So when people are told to get off sodium for their blood pressure, I'd say, really? Shouldn't we just increase the potassium? Because we need both of them for everything to work. Now let's talk about the protein and the fat. Now there's some fat right here from the oils and the avocado, but we're talking about the healthy saturated fat. Now I'm going to recommend a hamburger. Now you're probably going to go, wait a second, a hamburger? I'm not talking about the bun. I'm not talking about a hamburger that you would get at the fast food restaurant. I'm talking about buying some high quality meat, grass-fed, grass-finished. Why do I say hamburger and not a steak? You could do a steak, but sometimes these steaks are pretty lean, and we want a little more fat and high quality protein. If it's grass-fed, grass-finished, that's just a little bit better. I consume a lot of hamburger, okay? Now I also do ground lamb as well, and I do fish as well, but there's something about red meat that helps this metabolic process a little bit better than fish, even though you can do fish, you can do eggs. That will work, but there's some additional things in red meat. And it's interesting because what do they tell you to avoid to get healthy? Avoid red meat. So what's unique about this red meat is it's higher in these other things, which I'm not going to get into the woods with, but carnosine, carnitine, creatine, okay? So basically what these are things to help transport fat into the mitochondria. They're things to help protect you against the damage from carbohydrates. And there's several other things that just help make the mitochondria way more efficient. And you're going to have more of these in red meat than you will in fish. Also, it has a really good bioavailable source of heme iron, which is needed. Also, zinc and other trace minerals, selenium as well, super important. It has virtually all of the B vitamins, including B12, which you need. And also, just the type of protein compared to other protein sources, it's just super high quality, bioavailable. I personally feel the best when I consume red meat than any other protein, even fish. Even though I consume fish on a regular basis, I feel a little better with the hamburger. This red meat right here is probably the number one thing to help heal the body, because in this mitochondria, if you don't get enough high quality protein, it can't work. So we need these amino acids from something high quality to help repair all the damage, to help maintain the protein in our muscles, which we have a lot of. So if you look at protein, carbs, and fats, protein is the most important thing, and this is why we want to make sure it's high quality. Let's talk about a dessert. There's a certain type of microbe, it's called L. reuteri, that is usually missing in your gut, especially if you've ever had an antibiotic, especially if you've never been breastfed, because it comes from your mother. It controls a lot of other microbes, and it keeps the wrong bacteria out of the small intestine, so it kind of balances that out. It helps with insulin sensitivity. It helps reduce the pathogens. It also helps increase one of the most powerful hormones called oxytocin, which also, by the way, helps increase your social behavior. You're going to become more social when you consume it. It's pretty wild. I've done a whole video on it. It also helps build muscle mass, and it's a microbe in your gut. So it's a very important one. And what you could do is you can grow it into higher amounts with a yogurt maker and using half and half. I also add some sugar-free dark chocolate. Dark chocolate is loaded with polyphenols that greatly help the inside of the arteries. It increases nitric oxide. It's loaded with magnesium. Now, some people are going to say, well, you don't want to consume this because it's high in oxalates. Well, one of the antidotes to calcium oxalate is increasing your magnesium, because magnesium will bind more than calcium to the oxalate and prevent the formation of that stone. So magnesium is kind of the saving the day on that. If you wanted to add a little more cinnamon, you can actually help your blood sugar a little bit more. Low carb, intermittent fasting, a lot of sun. You get infrared from the sun. Over 50% of the sun is infrared. It actually penetrates 2 inches into your skull and your body, even through your clothes, and it supports the mitochondria when you increase infrared. Okay, you can get that from the sun, but you also get vitamin D, which is also super important in reestablishing normal mitochondria. After you eat, post-meal walk. Go for a walk for 20 minutes, and you can burn off the sugar. Now, you didn't eat any sugar in this meal, right? But if you have metabolic disease, your liver has such strong insulin resistance that you're going to be making more sugar out of other things for a while. That's just what happens with diabetes. This is why people wake up in the morning with something called the dawn phenomena, where they have higher blood sugar coming from the liver. Well, you can just walk that off. And of course, in addition to that, exercise, high intensity interval training, resistance training can also help this as well. Do not buy any more junk food, call them ultra processed foods. Just don't buy it, because you only have to say no once at the store. If you bring it home every night when it gets late out, when you're watching TV, you have to say no again and again and again because it's available. So that's the best way to kind of add another barrier, so it makes it more difficult, because I mean, you could literally drive to the store, right? But chances are you might go, I'd rather not. I'll eat something else instead of ultra processed food calories, because this is the source of metabolic disease. Now, one last point that I brushed off pretty quickly. Vitamin B1 is at the entry of this mitochondria. In other words, when you consume a lot of refined carbohydrates, your requirement for B1 goes way, way up. And most people run out of it. And then now you can't use that fuel. So it's a spark plug. And there's some fascinating information on what actually B1 does that I created this video and I talk about, and you should watch it. I'll put it up right now. Check it out.